Let me show these suckers how to ball out here. Oh, man, let's get this together here. Oh, layup. Oh, shot. Oh, three. Oh, it's like Brick City out here. Mid-range. Oh, my goodness. I can't buy a bucket out here. I missed the whole damn basket. Oh, my goodness. What's going on, man? My game is looking trash. Oh, here we go. Black Power Media shirt. Now we cooking. Trees. I'm taking on 3 of y'all with these right here. Between the legs. Oh, my goodness. Behind the back. Layup. Oh, did he just do a reverse? He is in beast mode out here. I ain't got to look. It's falling. Oh, my goodness. This guy is going 3, 2, 1. Kobe. Nice. Black Power Media, baby. Nice. Empower yourself. Go get you some of that Black Power Media again. Right here, blackpowermedia.org. Yeah.
I mix what I like. Yes. Back again. What's up, world? Welcome back to another edition of I Mix What I Like, right here live on BPM. I'm Jared Ball. Very happy to be your host. Please like, share, subscribe. Oh, you know what? I got to refresh my browser. My mic's not sounding right. So one quick second. Let me hit the refresh button on the joint because I don't know what happened from one broadcast to the next. But the mic dipped out. We got to get that straight. So let me just leave you with a little something. I'll be right back. We'll get started. But like, share, subscribe, invite people to join you. We'll be right back. All right, did that work? Is that better? I think that's going to have to do. I'm not sure. I feel like something's off. Did that fix it? Did that fix it? That might have fixed it. Yeah, that fixed it. Okay. Do you hear that? Did that speed shift real quick for you all? Anyway, let's do this. Watch this. Let's get a quick reset. I mix what I like. All right, welcome back, everybody, to I Mix What I Like right here on BPM. Quick reset. Let's get it started properly before we get to our next guest, who was just informing me off air about how long it's been since he's been here. So we will continue to hold that against him as is appropriate. Please do like, share, subscribe, join the platform, support us primarily through Patreon if you're able to. Otherwise, again, immaterially like, share, subscribe, put this in your socials, comment, invite people to join you. And as we get to this really good discussion about what's happening in Palestine in particular, but I think throughout the anti-colonial diaspora struggling world. So with that, let's get to our guest. You all know what it is. You all know who he is. Longtime activist organizer Hiram Rivera, back to the platform.
I'm back, baby.
You're supposed to be here more often. Somehow we lost track of you, and that's whack. So it's about time. Yeah. Welcome back.
I got a job.
You got a job. Got a jobby job. But at least in your work, of course, you acknowledge your association with BPM as often as possible. So we appreciate that. You know, it's an ongoing struggle. Folks around here to acknowledge that. So we appreciate you. But listen, man, all jokes aside, man, you reached out and you said, you know, you've had some personal experience with the West Bank and Palestine. Again, you've been a longtime activist and organizer with bringing that particular perspective. So let me just start with the very broad question of what are you seeing? What's happening? How does this comport to what your experience was when you went? And if you would, maybe just start with what was the context of your visit?
Yeah, thank you. And it's good to be back on the show on this side. And always shout out to the remixers first and foremost. Yeah, so in 2019, November 2019, I had the opportunity to travel out to Palestine. And when the opportunity presented itself, I definitely jumped on it for a number of reasons. So one, my first introduction to organized activism was through the Puerto Rican independence movement and the New African independence movement at that time. Specifically around the Puerto Rican side there were always these connections being made to Palestine, right? And there's always these sort of like links to the occupation of Palestine, the struggle against colonialism and occupation in Palestine, and the history, right, the long history of Puerto Rico's anti-colonial struggle as well. And while those two things are not a one-for-one in the least bit, definitely don't want to minimize what the Palestinians go through. That was definitely a driving force. I wanted to see for myself, right? How connected was this? How similar was it? What does occupation and colonization look like for other people, other countries? And so when the opportunity presented itself, I jumped on it, and I was able to spend 10 days primarily in the West Bank, right, in occupied. And all of my time was spent in the West Bank. Didn't cross over, maybe for like a short period in the afternoon, crossed over to what is occupied, right, Israel. But for the most time, just spent time up and down in the West Bank, traveling, speaking to folks, and learning from all the different people who were either doing, agricultural work to preserve the foods, preserve the seeds, right, and the olive trees. Those who were harvesting olives, those who were organizing communities of self-defense, right, because of the settler encroachment into their towns, to their neighborhoods. Got an opportunity to speak with Israeli activists, right, Jewish activists who are working on that side against their regime, right, and against what is happening in their name. An incredible experience, a beautiful, beautiful country, and just extremely intense. Extremely, I mean, it is a mind fuck, to say the least, right? I mean, just the amount of contradictions, seeing apartheid in real life, not in a history book, was definitely jarring, and something that absolutely shaped me forever.
So, yeah, just a number of questions, no particular order, and then at some point, I would like you to take us through what we'll just call the slideshow you sent me of photos, and then of course we can check in the chat for comments and questions. But the first thing I wrote down was again this question I always like to ask folks who go, like, but Palestinians and Arabs were told hate black people. Why are you over there in the first place? We're hearing some of that now. We heard some of it on the show last week. This isn't our fight. This isn't our issue. How do you see the connection between the Puerto Rican independence, New African liberation struggles, and what's happening there?
Yeah. I mean, first and foremost, Jared, I read. Reading is helpful, right? Reading is extremely beneficial to your global analysis, to your politics. And so
message.
For me, what I understood was this is not simply, right, the reason Israel exists, the reason why the occupation exists is because United States capitalism, United States imperialism. The same U.S. capitalism, imperialism, colonization that's colonized my country, that colonizes New African people in this country, right? That suppresses all working class people and poor people in this country. It starts here, and it starts with this. And so for me, it became very easy to connect, right? What is happening over there in that country? How, if we want to use cliche examples, how my tax dollars are being used, right? But not only that, just the hegemony, just it's not just the tax dollars, and it's not just the missiles and the bombs, but it's the messages around who we are as a people over here in this country, who we are as Black people over here in this country, and what gets projected into foreign countries. So on one end, it's about learning firsthand on the ground from the people themselves who are experiencing that imperialism and colonization, because oftentimes the folks outside the US have the clearest assessment and clearest understanding of what the US actually is than those of us who are in here wondering if LeBron James is going to catch up to Michael Jordan's, rings or the latest iPhones and stuff coming out. Even
the
with
answer is no, by the way. No, I'm just playing. My bad.
that's a whole. We'll save that for the sports show.
I was just playing. My bad. You're right.
I got a lot to say about your beloved Michael Jordan. But even for those of us, right, who are radicalized, who do read, just the amount of socialization, the limited access to other voices that are not New York Times, that are not CNN, and not MSNBC, right, is extremely limited. And so oftentimes being in those other countries, speaking to other people, gives you a very clear assessment of what this country is, and also the state of the country, just how powerful it is, just how weak it, right? Like it's a very different analysis, different assessment when you're able to look at it from the other side. And so for Puerto Rico, a lot of Puerto Ricans too who are like, why do we care about that? Those people don't care about us, yada, 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 right? It's ultimately those same folks also don't have a big problem with capitalism. Those same folks also don't have a huge problem, right, with the way the system is. What they want is their piece of the pie. Right. And when you keep talking about, let's put that to the side, let's talk about the politics here, you see very quickly it teeters somewhere between some sort of rad lib posturing, mostly centrist, right? But it's a lot of folks who don't have an issue with capitalism. They just want their piece of the pie. Right. And it has nothing to do with on top of the heavy socialization, right, and propagandizing that we get. And so for me, what I tell folks all the time is that we are fighting an empire. The reason why our schools are being closed here, the reason why we don't have healthcare, the reason why your student loans can't get paid, right? The fact that you have to pay so much money for school, the fact that these police are killing us more than they've ever killed us before, is a direct result of this capitalist system that was set up to enslave us. And this capitalist system can only breathe and exist as long as it is stealing, killing, robbing, looting from peoples around the world. And so the more we understand those struggles against that fight, against that looting, against that imperialism, the more we can connect to those folks. It makes it a whole lot easier for us to fight here in this country. Because if we don't fight, we're going to die, right? If we don't end capitalism, it's all over for us. And we're at that point when you add climate change on top of that. Now is the moment. Now is the moment.
So is how much of that answer dovetails with one you would give to when I ask folks like yourself who go on these trips, what from an outsider, never been invited, never gone perspective is sometimes lacking in terms of, so in other words, this question of when powerless people go to visit other powerless people, how does that help each gain power? And so
yeah,
I think I heard you give some answer to that, but I am sometimes, because a lot of times it feels like people come back and it just becomes another thing they add into their right. list of experiences as they go back to their rad lib, so on and so on,
right.
lived
right.
experience. So, but I'm just curious how you look at that. And again, I might just be,
yeah. First and foremost, I think the first thing, and this applies to the trips to Cuba that folks make, like trips to Venezuela,
which I have done, yeah,
is that it comes at the request of the folks from those countries.
Right on.
Right? Because they know that the media in this country is never going to tell the truth about not just about the political, geopolitical, economic experiences that they're going through, but just culturally who they are as a people, right? We're sold these images that folks outside the United States are all animals, they're savages, they don't care about this and that, right? So first and foremost, like, come here, eat with us, build with us, talk with us, see it for yourself, right? And so we go at the request of those communities. Second, I think it's to push back against that narrative around us being powerless. We are extremely disorganized, right? We're extremely disorganized. And I think that part of that request from those other countries for folks from the States to come over is to push us on that. Get organized. You and your Twitters or your individual platitudes or whatever, right, is not going to do it. You need to be organized, because if you're not organized and you're not coming back into an organization or some sort of organized body where you can take this knowledge and implement and put it into action, then it becomes what you said. It's some cool thing that just goes into your bio. It's like, oh yeah, I went, woo, woo, woo. And so that's always the message, right, from the global South, is get organized. What are your organizations? What are the projects that you're running? What are you doing? This whole thing of just kind of like, we just out here, we just individuals, it doesn't register, because that's not how they move in these other countries, right? And so for me, it pushes back against the notion of us being powerless, because not to say that we don't have the power that we need, but that is because a direct result, because we're not organized, right? And we're not organized at the level that we need to, and to be able to win those victories that we need to see. And so those travels to those other countries allows you to see what struggle looks like differently, specifically how it's organized differently, right? The level of discipline, the level of rigor that goes into study. It's not to say that everything is perfect in other countries. No, everybody in other countries don't just have it perfect. Everybody over there is not, ready to throw down, unless you have an extreme situation like we have now. So when I went to Palestine, was every Palestinian ready for the get down? No. They were chilling. They were eating ice cream. They were going on dates. They were like just living their lives. They were just like young people doing young people stuff. Kids not listening to their moms, right? Getting popped in the head. Folks just kind of out and about. But there is an understanding that at any moment, right, this whole thing can change. And so there was always that air that hung over, right? And so like I said, while everybody's just trying to live their lives regular, not trying to be the next, Palestinian Che Guevara or something like that. There is an understanding that at any point it could pop off. And I would say, I would link it back here, kind of like Black people in this country, right? For the most part, Black people, New African people, do not live plotting and planning for the day that we can strike back at Mr.
I know, it's crazy, right? How is that even possible? It's like, how is that?
But white people live in a perpetual fear of the big payback.
Yeah.
Because you know what you did, and you know what you benefit from, and you know what you still do. And so it keeps you up at night thinking that as Black people and as immigrant people, we out here plotting, right? Like Boukman and them folks in Haiti, because they never got over that. And reality is like, we not. We just want to be left alone. We want to be able to just live our lives and be happy and chill. Y'all go that, do whatever you want to do. We just want to be left alone. But there's always an understanding that at any point in time, their police departments, their Department of Children and Families, their welfare agencies, their schools, their housing authority, their institution after institution can make it so that we have to fight back. And we have to do that. And I would say it's that same situation over there, a slightly more extreme sense, but it's that same dilemma. And that's how I've tried to like connect it back to the folks who are like, why do we care? It's like, it's more about caring here. It's about us caring what we're doing here than it is forcing you to care about other people, an opportunity to learn.
No, right on. And I can't wait for this week's session in one of my classes where I assigned them to watch I think a 2018 documentary about Palestinians and hip hop and techno and all this, and it, as almost as a reminder of what you were saying, that a lot of in this case the youth, they're just like everybody else. They're trying to party, they're trying to express themselves musically, they're trying to rap, they're trying to dance, they're trying to get down with each other, they're all of these things, and then I did ask them. I didn't even want to let it happen naturally. I asked them to consider, as they're watching it, to be remembered that a lot of these people you're watching might not even be here anymore, and a lot of their families might be destroyed, and their infrastructure is being destroyed right now. But it's a nice, unfortunate juxtaposition, because in the documentary, for the most part, they're not doing the, like what you're saying. They're not let's revolution. They're just being young people. So. I appreciate that.
And real quick to the point about being invited, because I wasn't invited either. We just not as famous as Kamal Franklin, unfortunately. And so we don't get invited.
We try to get to.
We won't get invited to all the cool places.
But when we go, we rock our BPM stuff though. That's the key difference.
I'm gonna let y'all handle that in y'all internal meetings.
In our internal meetings, I see Cabal Wednesday.
In y'all internal meetings, y'all can handle that. The organization that I went with was an organization called Eyewitness Palestine. And Eyewitness Palestine is basically open to anyone who wants to go see Palestine for yourself, right? And so it's not a sort of invite thing. It's not like a celebrity thing. You got to know so and so. There are organizations that exist. The one that I know of and who I went with was Eyewitness Palestine, but there are other organizations that do those sort of like immersion trips and solidarity trips and stuff.
Yeah, no, I mean, part of it, I'm just talking shit. I just haven't put myself in
I get it.
where I would need to be, you know. So I get it. I'm just saying,
folks know if anybody in the chat is interested in looking them up and traveling. Eyewitness Palestine is definitely
right on. And I wonder if there was a group, I can't remember, this is 15 years ago or so. I had the one chance I sort of had to go. I would have required me to come up with a good bit of cash that I just didn't have at the time. So but anyway, I get it. Appreciate that. So another question I wanted to ask, because for me, it often takes what have been less extreme examples of what we're seeing happen right now to be reminded of the some of the nuances and details of how Palestine is set up, the disparate locations, the lack of continuity, contiguousness, something like that. And then the different leadership in the different places. So I did want to ask you, what is, to your knowledge, what was the relationship between Gaza and the West Bank in terms of leadership, movements, politics, struggles? Is there, to what extent are they similar, different, on the same page, not, you know?
So Palestine is split, right? So there's the West Bank, where is the largest and the majority of folks live, and then there's Gaza, which is basically, right, it's open air prison, it's a refugee camp. So the 247, I believe, villages just outside of Gaza that were appropriated by settlers, right, violently taken by settlers, all those refugees were pushed into the Gaza Strip. And so Gaza is basically made up of refugees from all the other different towns and villages that were pushed out, violently pushed out, right, and seized by Jewish settlers. The West Bank is split up into different sections. And so the way it works, right, and the way the apartheid regime has put it, is that they've sectioned off the West Bank into all these different sections. And so Palestinians live under a number of apartheid laws that dictate their movement, dictates their travel, dictates where they can live, dictates where they go to school. I mean, every part of their lives is dictated by some sort of law handed down by the Israeli regime. And so they have different ID cards. Their license plates are different colors, right? So those Palestinians who live inside of what is referred to as Israel proper, right, have a different license plate and ID from those who live in the West Bank. Those who live in the West Bank have different IDs amongst themselves and license plates that dictate. So based off your license plate color dictates where in the West Bank you can travel and where you cannot travel. Palestinians cannot travel into Israeli territory. That's including the settlements, illegal settlements. That's including, right, Israel itself. But also in different parts of the West Bank, they also can't travel. So it restricts their movement. In these sections of the West Bank, then you also have different political parties. And depending on where you're at, depending on what village you're in, right, there will be a political party who's kind of like the ones who are the more popular, the ones who are sort of like in control over there. And in Palestine, you have about six different political parties, right? And so the folks in Gaza is a very different situation, right? And over there is where you end up having a lot more like of the Hamas, and that sort of thing. In the West Bank, you have everybody from the different, Hamas, the Muslim Brotherhood folks. There is the PFLP, the Palestinian Liberation Front, which are the Marxists. So anything from Muslim, right? Like Muslim identified, Muslim religious centered organizations, all the way to secular Marxist organizations and everything in between. So it depends on what town you're in, depends on what part of the West Bank you're in, will dictate more or less. And they fly flags. And so each party has a different colored flag. And so based off the flags that you'll see when you're driving through the towns and the villages, will let you know in whose territory you're in. Do they all collaborate and coordinate? Yes and no. Again, depends on the situation, depends on, because they all have different viewpoints as to what should be done regarding Palestine, regarding the struggle, different paths towards that, different end goals. I think right now in this situation, in these extreme situations of war, of open genocide, is where you see more of the collaboration and more of them coming together. Outside of that, right, they have their differences and they negotiate those as principled as they can. Different way. That said, all of those groups are also very different from the Palestinian Authority, which is the recognized governing body, right, for Palestine. So with the prime minister and stuff, which for the most part, the majority of the people that I met and the majority of folks were not fans of the Palestinian Authority, saw them as puppets of the Israeli regime, didn't see them as being trustworthy, right? And again, rely more on these other independent organizations that they're organized into.
Right on. So that was the basic set of questions I wanted to ask. I don't know if you want to, if we want to go through your slideshow and have you share some of the pictures, talk a little bit about that, and then or bring up.
That's fine. That's
chat,
fine.
Some comments or questions from the chat, or both. We can do a little bit of both.
Yeah, and I can just talk about the trip.
All right, cool.
And so the trip, for those who have gone, right, you have to fly into Ben Gurion in Tel Aviv. And this is where you are first met with the intensity, right, of the Israeli security state. But even before that, you feel that in the airports flying to Tel Aviv, right? And so I flew from the United States, I flew to Turkey. You pass the checkpoints, you go to the gate, just like any other gate, they have seats, TVs and stuff waiting. At the gate to go to Tel Aviv, they had a second security checkpoint. It was the only gate. It's literally the gate where you give your ticket to go to the airport. Had a separate set of security, another set of scanners, another set of like Israeli security who were there to check you again, right, before you even get on the plane to fly to. So that was kind of like, wow, right? I just flew about 13 hours to Turkey, and now I'm going through this other security thing. You get to the airport, and basically what you're met with is you walk to the gate, customs, and they're kids, 18, 19-year-old kids who've been conscripted into the IDF, right, who are running the gates. They look at your passport and they ask questions. And of course, if you are not Jewish, if you are not Israeli, if you're not white, it's going to be made difficult for you. And so immediately the first questions I was asked when I got to the gate was, why did you come to our country? Why are you here? Right? They look at the name, they pronounce it Hiram, right? In Spanish, there's no H. In the Caribbean, we don't pronounce H's, at least not where the H's are supposed to be. But that's how they pronounce it. They look at me, and that was already like a red flag. So it's like, why are you here? Why did you come to our country? What are you doing here? Right? And I'm like, I'm here to see the Holy Land. I'm here to see, right, like where Jesus was born and all that stuff. And then you get sent to the back. Some people get sent to the back, right? I was one of those folks who get sent to the back, and they do. The trip is that when you get sent to the back and they're asking you all these extra questions to see if you're allowed, because they sent a lot of people. I saw a lot of people get sent away. And so they'll just deny you on the spot, put you on a plane and send you back. And they don't care if you have a connecting flight. They'll just send you back from the country you came from. And that's up to you to get back home. But they'll send you. So there are folks who are being sent back for whatever reason. Again, it's up to the 18-year-old, 19-year-old sitting in the booth to decide whether they want to let you in or not. In the back, where they're asking you all kinds of questions and they're asking you why you're here and yada, yada, yada. The trip was that you have pilgrims coming from all over the world. So there are a bunch of Asian folks, there are Korean folks, there's mad Latino folks, a crazy amount of Filipinos, Christians primarily coming from all over the world who are there. And they have one of your people there to ask you questions why you here. Right? And
what
that
do you
was
mean
wild.
one of your people?
Whatever you are, they got one of you.
They got one of you there.
They got one of you there being like, why are you here?
So there's never any lost in translation or confusion.
No, very clear in perfect dialect of where you coming from. I want to know why are you here? Why certain things are not adding up for them. And so I'm just sitting there waiting, and I just hear this Latino. It's like Hiram Rivera, and I'm just like, what? And this dude, he gave my passport. He's talking to me in Spanish. Like, well, I'm just like, I didn't ask nothing. I was like, let me just go. Let me just get my bags and just go. Because at any point in the airport, even when you're at the baggage claim, they can pull you back, right? They can be like, I don't know, I don't like how you grabbed your bag. Come back and kick you out, right? So you're never fully in the country until you are out of the airport, right? So they're like, yo, get your stuff, get your bag, and dip. Don't hang around too long because they don't like that, and they'll kick you out. And so we took off, and then we ended up going to Jerusalem. I spent most of my time in Jerusalem, and so that's just the beginning, right? The airport is just the beginning of like what you have to expect, and especially if you are a non-white person, especially if you are not Jewish, that is going to mark your experience for the rest of the time.
So like, how specific is it? So if I show up, they're going to have a black Jew waiting there, like a half black Jew waiting there to be like, to check my return home credentials. I can't get like some.
I don't know, bro.
I
just know they pulled out the Latino brother, and he was like, "Wepa," and I was like, "Whoa!" I saw Asians, I saw Africans, I saw, yeah.
That's deep.
Whatever you are, they got you there to do that. They
got you. Wow, and it's up to the 18 or 19-year-old.
And then there's soldiers everywhere, and they're all kids.
Yeah,
they're all kids.
Yeah, I'm trying to go with Drake. I'm trying to partner up with Drake.
And so that's a different experience. If you go with like if you go as an invited guest of the regime, right? Like the way celebrities are, the way student groups are, it's a very different experience because you see those two. It's a lot of banners, a lot of welcoming, it's a lot of hey, right? Like that sort of thing. If you just pulling up, they like nah. And if you brown with a little funny, and it's funny because my name is Hebrew, but there was like, they asked, where's your grandfather from? Because they're trying to find the Arab, right? They're trying to find where's your grandfather from? Where are you coming from? I was like, my people are Puerto Rican. They have no idea what that is, right? They're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, it's by Cuba, like the Caribbean. I'm like, yeah, but they still like, where's your grandfather from, right? Where are your people from?
I'm really kind of curious. I wonder what their records are like, and if the stories I got in growing up are true, because they might be like, they might be like, we already kicked your grandfather and grandmother out the first time. You can't.
I don't know.
We already kicked them out. You try to come back in here now, yet Ed.
You should go try it. Live stream.
Oh man, I've never been interested in that. Once in the Navy, we were supposed to go. And somebody did something, and we got redirected, and so I never. But yeah, I should. I don't know. I just have no interest. But
I mean, they're gonna look at you, and because you don't look white, right? It's gonna be.
It depends who you asking. It depends who you asking.
Yeah, it's definitely a flag for everybody, not just the soldiers. It's like a flag for everybody.
Oh yeah, Dorian, I'll come back. I've shared that story a little bit here. I can tell it another time, or maybe later if we have time. I don't want to take the time now to do it, but yeah, they did. Anyway, so I got these. I don't know. I don't think they're in any particular order. The way the app just opened them up.
No,
but
yeah, I could just talk about it.
Sure.
And so, like I said, the reality of, so on one end. And it's such a trip. It's such a trip, especially coming from this country, right? And no matter how radical you are, no matter how much you've read, no matter how, right, like the level of Americanization, right, in United States, and that we all carry with us, it comes out, right, in these different places and stuff. And so the ability to live in this dual reality where folks are going about their days, they're just like every other family, every other society, every other community. In terms of just normal stuff, right? But you live with this intensity of the perpetual violence that always hangs over your head. And so this was a canister, a smoke canister when we were in, this was just outside of Jerusalem, where they held rubber bullets, they held canisters that get used periodically on the civilians. And so, like I said, the IDF is mostly teenagers who get conscripted into mandatory military service. And the way that they train them how to use these weapons is by actually using the weapons, right? And so they would just indiscriminately like pick a day or pick a time where they'll go into a Palestinian neighborhood, a Palestinian village, drive in with the Jeeps and just start shooting these tear gas canisters, because that's how they learn how to shoot the tear gas canisters, is by shooting them at Palestinians in real time.
So they don't bother with ranges. They don't even do shooting ranges and training facilities. They just,
no, I'm sure they have
right
some
on the
that, but the best thing for them is just to pull up on you and just
Right
start
on the
shooting them
people.
indiscriminately. The reason I took a picture of it, one is like in case anyone has, at the time this was 2019, right? So we didn't see too many of this, but now with the Floyd uprisings, I think a lot of us have seen some of these in real life. But if you look at it, right, this canister, the address on here is Pennsylvania. And so the canisters that are being used inside of Palestine, right, and that are being shot at Palestinians are made here in Pennsylvania. And so these are all US made weapons that are getting shot over there inside of Palestinian villages and Palestinian neighborhoods on a regular basis.
Wow.
Which is another connection, right, to us. This was a mural that was just randomly painted again outside of Jerusalem, that's depicting the water issue. I don't know if folks remember, there was a press conference where Kamala Harris was speaking, and she was talking about wars and how wars in the past were fought for oil, and that the wars in the future will be fought for water. And what is happening is that Israel doesn't have enough water for where it's situated and for the population that it has. I think it's about 7 million people, almost 8 million people. And so what they do is that they steal the water, and the illegal settlements, right? Also, they steal the water from the Palestinians. And so they drill pipes, they build pipes, and they reroute the water either from the streams or from the water pipes themselves into Israeli settlements and back into Israel, leaving Palestinian villages and Palestinian communities with very little or no water. And that water is turned on and shut off by the Israeli regime, right? And so this depicts that process of them basically stealing all the water from Palestine and redirecting it through pipes into illegal settlements and back into Israel, Israel itself, and shutting it off. As of today, I saw on the internet that the Israeli regime has also now shut off electricity and water to prisoners inside of prisons inside of Israel. Right. And so as they've kidnapped thousands of people in these past few days, they have now shut off the water inside the prisons as well, and electricity inside the prisons as well. And this has been going on for eons. And so this is what this mural depicts. This right here is in Hebron, the city of Hebron. This is basically, so what you have are like these bazaars, right? And these markets where you can go, you can buy jewelry, you can buy spices, you can buy all kinds of things. The Palestinians have had to put up these fences above them because these buildings that you see up there are buildings and apartments that settlers took, right, and confiscated. And what they do is they throw their trash down on the Palestinian merchants. They throw trash down on Palestinians who are shopping. They take dirty water and they throw it down and they splash them just for the hell of it, to disrupt business, but just to be a constant menace and a constant terror on these people. And so they've had to, and you see this in Jerusalem as well, they build these fences above their markets and their bazaars, or wherever Palestinians are just going about their business to do shopping, because Israeli settlers are constantly throwing down garbage, they're throwing down dirty water, they're throwing down a bunch of stuff just to terrorize the folks on a daily basis. This picture right here is in Jerusalem. This is Palestine. This is what Palestine looks like, right? This is the sun coming over Palestine. This is what Palestine looks like. The majority of Palestinians have never seen all of Palestine. And so when I would travel to different parts, be it Bethlehem, be it the Nakab, be it different parts of I would show pictures because again, they can't travel, right? And so they can't see all of Palestine. There's generations of folks who have never seen another part of Palestine. And so when you bring these pictures, right, they're able to see their own country through the eyes of someone else because they're not allowed to travel. And a lot of that is, again, to control movement, is to prevent, it's the fear of the big payback, right? That white people around the world live with, right? Thinking that everyone wants to come back and get them, like we all want to come back and get them. And so this was just a picture of what Palestine, the majority of Palestine, looks like throughout the country. This is in Hebron again. This was a jeweler's row. So this was where they sold jewelry, they sold gold, they sold all kinds of stuff, and was completely destroyed by the settlers. And so the settlers would come and completely destroy their shops, destroy this, and just kept destroying it, kept destroying until they just dumped so much garbage in there that the Palestinians kind of like put a fence and just shut it down permanently, because the settlers just wouldn't let them have it. And they just kept destroying it, destroying the shops, attacking the shops, and dumping garbage in there to make sure that they wouldn't sell their in this specific part was their jewelry, right, and other merchants. That's the Dome on the Rock. The dome, to get to the Dome on the Rock was a trip. And so my time in Palestine, I spent 10 days there. Out of the 10 days, it was about four and a half days that I was routinely, so I went with a group. The group was majority Jewish folks, older Jewish people. Routinely pulled out of the group. I was the only brother in the group. Routinely pulled out of the group, walked through metal detectors, questioned continuously, rifles held to me, right? And they would ask me questions like, am I carrying bombs? Am I carrying weapons? Why am I here? Again, why am I in the country? Who sent me? Where did I come from? Again, would repeatedly ask me if I was carrying bombs with me. Walk me through metal detectors multiple times, right? As a US citizen, which I'll tell you right now, they do not care about your US citizenship. They could give a crap about your blue passport. That does not save you. That does not protect you from anything, right? Walking to the Dome on the Rock, you have to pass by the Wailing Wall. All of that is checkpoints. And so part of the restriction of movement and the daily apartheid that Palestinians have to live in is just the incredible amount of checkpoints that exist everywhere, on the road, on the streets, in the markets, right? You're in Jerusalem, and this is in Jerusalem. And it's just this jarring experience of you're in the Holy Land, right? And what's considered the holiest place on earth for all the major religions. And so you have everybody there who is coming to worship, who is coming to see. And so there are Palestinians who are clearly oppressed, who there are signs that say they can't enter here, they can't go there, they can't do this, they can't do that, they can't walk here, they can't do that. Israeli soldiers everywhere with Call of Duty style rifles. There are settlers everywhere who are giving you disgusting looks, who say things to you in Hebrew. Sometimes they say it in English because the majority of them are coming from New York, right? And so I had a Mets jersey one day, and I got a bunch of "Go Yankees, go Yankees," right? So they're talking shit to you in Brooklyn accents, right? And then you have just swarms of pilgrims, Christian pilgrims that are coming again from Asia, from the United States, from Latin America, who want to walk the stages of the cross. And so you have a lot of Christian stuff, and they sell, the crown, the thorn crowns, and there are all these different things. And Jesus fell down here, and then you walk away, and Jesus also fell down here, and then Jesus fell down here. I don't know much about Jesus. Everything I learned about Jesus, I learned from Mel Gibson. But apparently, right, all these there's all these places where you can see that he was here and he does there and yada yada. But folks kind of go about their business blind to the very real reality of soldiers harassing Palestinian young people. The signs that are denying Palestinians movement anywhere, right? Openly harsh Zionist rhetoric and against Christians, against Muslims, against non-Jews, right? You have plenty of other Israelis who don't participate in that sort of thing as well. And everyone is there at the same time, as if this is all just normal, as if everything is right, everything is cool. The Christians, you keep walking to your side. Jewish folks, you walk to your side. Muslims, you walk to your side. And so to get to the Dome on the Rock, you have to pass all of this and pass the checkpoints. And again, explain to them why you're there. No, I don't have bombs. No, I don't have any weapons. I'm coming from the United States. No, my grandfather's not Arab. No, right? To make it all the way, here. This was in the Nakab. We went to visit a Bedouin community, and Bedouin communities would be, and where the Bedouins live would be, the closest thing would be like indigenous reservations here in this country. They're out in the desert. This is out by Jericho, close to, again, the mountain where Jesus fought the devil. I don't know. I learned all this stuff when I was over there. That's there too. So you're out in the desert, the Bedouin community, who has been completely cut off from everything else. And the regime has cut them off from everything. They live in makeshift homes, makeshift schools with no paved roads. They have their water from the stream cut off because they built pipes and redirected back into Israel. And then you also have these U.S. bombers that fly over every 30 minutes, every hour. You're close to the border of Jordan. And so you see U.S. military planes, which belong to the.
You mean actually you mean U.S. military or U.S. supplied?
U.S. supplied.
Okay, I just check it. I just want to make sure I was clear on that. Okay.
Yeah. No. U.S. supplied, but right, bomber planes that just kind of like. And again, as a U.S. citizen, right, this is where you're like, Americanness comes up. It's just like you see that at like Super Bowls when they have the jets. This was very different, and they fly very low to let you know, right? And just this constant military presence and this constant, right? These bombers just constantly around. As you're like meeting with folks who've been there for generations, who will be considered close to as indigenous as possible in that region, living in 10 makeshift houses, right? And it's and on the border of Jordan, you can see Jordan off to the side, right? And it's just kind of like this very intense reality. These are one of the the watchtowers everywhere in Palestine. Every neighborhood, everywhere in Palestine, you have these watchtowers. And these watchtowers exist. You have IDF soldiers that sit inside there and watch everybody. And all they do is watch everybody 24/7. And they have snipers in there as well. So there isn't a part of Palestine that you are going to walk in that you're not going to run into one of these watchtowers, constantly watching you, constantly surveilling, constantly sending messages out. And you know that there's snipers in there as well, who periodically, right, and we've learned, will periodically shoot folks depending if there's a rally, if there's a march, if there's some sort of manifestation, right, will shoot people. So the amount of children that have been shot by snipers that we learned was incredible. And sometimes indiscriminately, sometimes it's just to do it, right? And again, part of the little checkpoints that they put inside your neighborhood. So your movement is constantly being controlled, constantly being manipulated to keep you in a state of disorder.
And is it like a CCTV situation also? Is it all sort of analog surveillance with the loudspeakers as well? I see a camera up there too. So
it's all of it. It's all
of it. They just got cameras everywhere watching okay, right on.
Cameras everywhere. And then soldiers in their towers everywhere. Messages constantly like blaring. Yeah, it's everywhere.
Hold on, let me get this back so I can. Was that the last one?
I don't know.
No.
Oh, you can go down to the other one.
To this one?
Yeah, so this right here is just outside of Jerusalem. It's a town. It was a town called Lifta, and Lifta, off into the horizon there, those white buildings over there, is an illegal Jewish settlement. And so way back during the Clinton days, right, in the Oslo Accords, was the beginning of, well, supposedly the beginning of creating a two-state solution, right? The majority of Palestinians don't want two states. They want one Palestine where Jews and Muslims and Christians can all live together in peace, the way they had done for hundreds of years before the Nakba in 1948, right? That is what they want. That is what they talk about all the time. There are Jews in Palestine. I've met them as well, right? They're like, they always lived in peace. It was Palestine. They always lived in peace. The issue isn't with Jewish people themselves. The issue is with the colonial regime, which they understand is acting on behalf in the benefit of United States' imperial interests in that region of the world.
And by the way, that would be for the point I was making earlier. That would be the sort of the intervening point where really my great grandparents and that story comes into play. That point right there, the pre-Israel, relatively peaceable existence, and often among secular, even actual left politics. But that's again, so yeah. Just to throw that in there real quick, but
yeah, and so it's cool to see. So like in Palestine, you will see Jews, and like, you know, Jews, not like, I mean, Jews, right, and who have lived there for generations and generations and generations, right, and who have always lived there in peace, and who've said like their families have always lived in peace. The idea of Palestinians and Jews not being able to live in peace in one country is a myth, because it always was like that. It's just now with the Zionism acting in benefit and in service of U.S. capital, of U.S. interests, of U.S. imperialism is why we have this situation that we have now. And so after the Oslo Accords, right, and during the Clinton era and the path with Yasser Arafat and those folks moving towards a two-state solution, it was deemed illegal, right, that Israel cannot build settlements inside of Palestinian land, because that was supposed to be the beginnings, right, where they would ground themselves to build this Palestinian state in this two-state solution. Violating international law, Israel allows settlers to move into Palestinian lands, set up their settlements, so then they can claim it as Israeli territory, Israeli land, and continue to seize more and more land, right? Which is an act
and
of
provoke violent responses that they can then use to justify more repression.
Right. And so then it is a direct violation of international law, right? Is an act of genocide. The UN has said occupying forces, colonial powers are prohibited from displacing the native population, one, during this moment of occupation, but also two, transplanting a foreign population into those lands to then claim that. And that's what they do. So most of these settlements and most of these settlers, like I said, are coming from New York. They're coming from the United States, right? And you see them walking around with machine guns. They walk around with Yankee caps and machine guns. They walk around, they talk to you in New York accents, right? They're coming from Eastern Europe as well. These folks are not native to the region whatsoever, right? But they are given free land. They're given citizenship, and they're given free land to do that, with the understanding, right? And this is the vileness of the Israeli regime, not just towards the Palestinians, but towards Israeli citizens as well, and towards Jews as well, because they are willingly putting these people in a dangerous situation, right? Where they're going to end up being attacked. They're going to end up, right? Because folks are not going to just let you take their land away. They're not going to let you just displace them without a fight. And so you put them in the middle of all of that, and you put them up to be attacked. You put them up with the potential of violence being sent back towards them, and to use them as collateral damage to continue to push this narrative, right, of never again. Because so many Jewish folks are raised, right, with the stories of the tragedy of Nazi Germany and the Jewish Holocaust, right, during the World Wars, and the never again theme, and this idea that there is no place on the planet where Jews can feel safe. There's no place on the planet where Jews can ever feel comfortable. And this is why you need an Israel, and this is why you need to come to Israel, right? I push on folks to show me where in the world in 2023, are Jews being persecuted at that level? Where are they being stopped and frisked? Where are they being killed in mass? Where are they being, does anti-Semitism exist? Absolutely. Right? There's all those things that, like, it does, absolutely. But en masse, to what they build it up to, nowhere near. But you have to keep pushing that fear and embedding folks with that fear that the world is out to get you, the world is out to harm you. And what better way to drive that home than to put you in the direct line of fire so that you can be attacked and that your settlements can be rushed by the original inhabitants, to then come back and be like, there you go, you see, there it is. But the Israeli regime knows what's going to happen to their citizens. They know what's going to happen to their people, and they do it intentionally to propagate this.
But
right?
we got to be real. Without Israel, Kanye and Kyrie are going to be left to have an unfettered analysis and oppressive relationship to Jews in the diaspora.
If Earn Your Liberation is able to get Diallo to interview Kanye, Kyrie, and the brother y'all had last week, YouTube, it might implode. YouTube shut itself down. YouTube will be like, you know what? We don't need to exist no more.
We quit.
We done. This was wild. Y'all messed it up for everybody. Really quick, the town of Lifter here that you're seeing. Wait, go back real quick.
My bad. Yeah.
The town of Lifter this is what happens. Was a town that was there for hundreds of years. Settlers came in and violently expelled, either killed everybody that was there or violently expelled everyone from this town. And what remains are the ruins of the homes of the Palestinians who used to live there. And so they killed everybody there, forced everyone else out, left that little town in ruins so that they can then come in and be like, there's no Palestinians here. They abandoned, they left it alone. We're using it, we're moving in. And that's how they built the other settlements. And that's how they plan this. And so I just want to say, right, that's kind of like the move that gets done.
Hey, even down to the minute level of the Hickory Ridge Village Board issue. That is what Kimco Corporation did to our shopping center. It raises the rates to push everybody out. And then when you're walking around looking at empty stores, they're like, see, y'all didn't want to do anything with it. So you got to let us take over and do more of what we want with it, because you all are just sitting here with empty stores. And it's just a mess. Nobody's here. Look at your bombed out shopping center. I mean, I'm joking, but it is the same. It is the same thing. It's the same strategy reduced to the level of these tree-lined streets. It's crazy.
There are also folks, like I said, the majority of the folks were Jewish folks from the States who they themselves during the 60s were in Israel. And I think Chomsky had done it too, lived in a kibbutz, right? Kibbutzes. And for them, there were like these sort of like socialist fantasies, and it was like communes and that sort of thing. And the kibbutz, right, living out there, the social. But what it was just settlerism, right? It was Zionist settlerism. And so it was packaged and sold as like these socialist communes and very lefty sort of things. But no, it was this, right?
That's the story.
Right.
So again, I don't have real close relationships with really anybody in my family, but so I have to rely on versions that I got, and I call them myths. But the way I was raised, that was the story. My great grandparents were, in the language of our household, were tricked by Zionists to leave Eastern Europe in the late 1800s. And so my grandmother was born in Palestine. And they, by 1920s, were, again, the language of our household, kicked out by the Zionist Jews who said, you all are too secularist. Your belief in this socialist kibbutzim is messing up our project. And you took your children to a circus on the Sabbath, hanging out with Arabs. So y'all got to go. Yeah. That's the version I got. So the stories I was raised with were, your grandmother was born and raised in Palestine and was cool. Yeah. And everything was cool. And they left, and then they were encouraged to leave or forced to leave, having felt tricked by the 1920s, and then were proven right by 1948. So I mean, and
like I said, you still have some of those folks. I met them, right? Jews who live in Palestine who've been there forever and don't want to move to Israel. They're like, I live here. We've always been here. We're in Palestine. We're Jews. We live side by side. It's all love. It's always been like that. They don't want to. But this is how that happens, and with the settlements coming in really quick, mostly from the United States and stuff, right? That's
crazy. That's crazy. That and they're wearing Yankee caps and stuff and whatnot. That's so we
this
we got a
is
couple.
this,
Yeah, I'm just going. Yeah, my
this
bad.
is
I went out of
again.
order.
So this is the wall, right? The occupation wall. And when I went, I always assumed that the wall was one wall, right? That kind of separated Palestine from occupied Israel, right? And the wall isn't just one wall like they're trying to build on the border. The wall is actually a spider web. So if you look at it on the map, it looks more like a spider web. So the wall shoots off into a bunch of different directions, because the purpose of the walls are not so much to keep Palestinians away from Israel, is to keep Palestinians away from other Palestinians. So they build the walls straight through neighborhoods. They build them straight through towns. So half your family will be on one side of the wall, your other half of the family will be on the other side of the wall, and you are not allowed to travel, right, to either side. The walls are also built between neighborhoods and land. And so many of the people work the land, like farmers and stuff. And so the wall separates you from your land and from your family land. Right. And the reason for that is because under Israeli law, right, against the laws of the regime, it says that if your land is untended to for, I think it was about 3 years, the state can come in and confiscate that because you're not using it. And so what they do is they build the walls, right? So folks live in their communities, they live in their neighborhoods, and then their farmlands are like a little out. And so they'll drive out and they'll go out there and they'll work the land and come back home. They build the wall to separate people from their land, to then make the argument, you haven't tended to your land in 3 years, in 5 years. Let's not act like there's this massive 20-foot concrete wall with snipers all over it, right? You haven't tended, and then they're allowed to confiscate that and claim that for Israel. And so these walls you see everywhere, because their purpose there to just disorient you. It's there to limit movement, barbed wire everywhere, right? And this is what it looks like 24/7 when you're traveling. And then the snipers in the tower who are always watching, who are always aiming, who periodically are shooting, constantly sending messages. And what you'll see here, I don't have a picture of that. There's signs that say, and some of you may have seen them before, that say Israeli citizens prohibited from traveling over here. Israeli citizens are prohibited from being. The Palestinians didn't put that, right? That's the Israeli regime that puts that for their citizens to not travel into Palestine. So Palestinians are not saying, Israeli, you can't come into Palestine, you can't come visit. It's their own government that is saying you can't go over there, or if you do, you're in extreme danger, right? And they put the fear of God in folks. Is there a legitimate concern? I think yes. At this point, there's a legitimate concern, right? But for the most part, you don't have those types of situations. I did see Israelis, if they were like owning stores or owning shops in Palestine and stuff like that. You know what I mean? It wasn't the regime is just constantly propping up this fear, but the constant surveillance and the constant threat of death. This is a checkpoint. This is also in Hebron. And so when you're walking, and as you're walking through neighborhoods, as you're walking through the cities, these checkpoints are put in throughout there. So this, again, you leaving from your house, going to the store, you're going to have to go through a checkpoint. And this is what the checkpoint looks like. And what they have now, maybe some folks have seen it since 2019, they have robotic guns at the top of the gates, right? And so they're rifles that are robotic, that are controlled by somewhere else, almost like drones, are controlled by somewhere else, aiming rifles at everyone who walks through the turnstile into the checkpoint. I think the other picture shows you what it looks like inside of the checkpoint. And that's what it looks like passing through the checkpoint. So it's an extremely narrow walkway. There's soldiers all over on each side. There are rifles that are constantly pointed at you. They check your identification. They pull folks to the side. Again, I was pulled to the side, constantly, again, asked, where are the bombs? Where are the guns? Why are you here? Who are you? right? It's just a constant thing. And it was wild at the tomb of Mary and Joseph, right? And all of these folks, all of the saints, all the stuff, they're all buried throughout the Holy Land. At the tomb of Mary and Joseph, I was pulled out, and there were 4 guards with rifles on me, hand my passport, again asking the same old question about the bombs. And dude looked me dead in my eye, holding my passport, and asked me, how did you steal this passport? And I was like, what? And like, how did you steal this passport? And like the soldiers kind of like close in, and they have these rifles and stuff. And I'm just like, what are you talking about? Like, there's no way in hell you're gonna steal and falsify a US. I mean, that's CIA level stuff, to falsify a US passport, right? But it was to that level of antagonizing, that level of disrespect, that level of just blatant.
But they
right?
thought you photoshopped that joint. I mean, get the hell out of here.
They do
That's
it to
crazy.
message you.
Yeah.
They do it to mess, and they do it as a sense to kind of keep you in check and to try to break you. So at every point in time. So again, the white folks didn't have that situation. There were 2 other sisters. There was an older sister and a younger sister. They fortunately didn't have to go through that. I was the only brother there. I was the only man of color who was there. And because how I looked, the name, and all that, it just kept raising flags for them. And so everywhere I went, it was constantly. One of the most, again, jarring experiences was when we're coming back from Bethlehem. We get stopped at a checkpoint. The bus gets stopped at a checkpoint. And I already knew the drill because it had happened so many times already, right? That I just started emptying out my pockets, taking everything out, right? And just because it just makes the whole process longer, right? So if you have nothing, the process is a lot quicker. They board the bus, they check, and they just bark at you. They don't talk to you like a human. And this is the other Jews too, right? They bark at you. They don't talk to anyone like a human being because you're dealing with soldiers 24/7. It was an Israeli woman and an Ethiopian brother, little dark-skinned Ethiopian brother who came on the bus with a right. Dude must have been about 5'4", 5'5", and I'm not trying to height shame nobody, right? But this little man had a rifle probably half the size, if not a little more than him, right? He walks in. The brother on the bus passes all these folks, looking at everybody, grilling everybody, looks in the back, sees me. It was like, you, let's go. And took me out. And I'm just like, dog, you for real, my man? Like, you for real? And so you have plenty of Ethiopian Jews. You have plenty of these like, Black Jews, Black Hebrews, what do you call them, who are there, who are part of the IDF as well, and who are actively engaged and actively involved, willingly involved in the persecution, the oppression, the suppression of Palestinians and anybody else who they think may be some type of Arab. For the most part, they thought I was Egyptian. And so they kept thinking I was coming from Egypt, right? But it was an Ethiopian brother. And at that checkpoint, there were Ethiopians asking me, why am I there? Do I have bombs? Who did I visit? Who sent me? Yada, yada, yada. And I'm just like, bro, there was no words. All I could do was stand as close to him as possible because then I was like so much taller than him, and it was clearly triggering his, like, again, I'm not height shaming nobody. I'm not the tallest.
And just be clear, you at least, I believe you bit taller than me. So
I'm like
to the extent,
no, you taller than me, but I'm like 5'11", but still, this man, I was just like, but
you project big because I feel like last time we was in person, you was taller than me.
Listen, world, I'm gonna talk that in the camera. You only as big as you think you are. You know what I'm saying? Those numbers, that's a social construct.
That's what my man had been saying to himself in the mirror all morning. Right. Clearly, you only as big as you think you are. I'm 7 feet.
You think you are. Right.
Wow, that's crazy. But we do know about that. We know about how that works here.
But as
we
those
know about
people,
that works,
because we learned about that. We learned about it too, right? We spoke to them, we learned about it. As those people are also persecuted because they're Black, right? Because the Israeli the Zionists is extremely racist. The Zionists in Israel are extremely racist, right? And so they are persecuted. Those Ethiopians who are there and the Africans who are there are persecuted, called all kinds of monkeys, niggas, all kinds of stuff, while you're also playing your role, much like Black Marines, much like a lot of like Black police officers here, much like, right? And again, that connection to folks here is like, well, we got brothers and sisters, right, who are in the military, who do that same thing to us, who show out, right, for their
Show
sergeants and
out.
whoever all the time.
Yes.
It's the same thing that happens, and it was them who did it to me over there. And I'm just like, wow, this is a trip. This is, it was just jarring. And the trip, the thing was, the Jewish couple, because after a while you get used to it, and that was the thing, right? I had to sit with myself after a while, like you get used to it, right? And you learn to get used to it, and so you know how to move. So I already knew how to take the stuff out of my pockets. I knew how to answer. I had already been socialized in 10 days, not broken, but definitely socialized into the apartheid system, right? So I knew that I'm just gonna have to stand in the back of the line and wait because I'm getting taken out, or and the group knew as well. So there'd be things that they would do and they would prepare for, because they knew, get ready. So if they saw a checkpoint, they'd be like, Hiram, get ready, or hi, like, yo, what do you know what I mean? Because they already knew what was going to happen. Yeah. There was a Jewish couple. Jewish couple asks me, because they always have guns to me. They always have guns to me. And you get chippy, right? You look people dead in their eyes, and one thing people in authority, especially if they're in uniform, don't like is you looking at them in their eyes. And so there'd be these stare downs. And when the dude asked me, right, he was like, how did you steal this passport? By that day, it was like day number 4 of this or whatever. And I was just like, what the fuck you mean how I stole the passport? And they look at you like, yo, who the fuck, right? But you get to a point where it's like, I don't even care no more. I don't care no more. I'm tired of this. I'm tired, right? Because it is physically exhausting. And just like that, this older Jewish couple asked me, they're like, wow, it's so, they're like, it's incredible and astonishing, like how you're able to be so calm in that situation, how you're able to, like, with all those guns, and being pulled out by soldiers and taking into these places and taking like how are you so calm? Like, how do you do that? And I was like, I've been doing this since I was 14. Right? And like, what? I was like, the police started pulling guns on me since I was 14. I've had police pull guns on me from the time I was 14 to the last time I was about 34 years old. You learn real quick, right? How to and I credit that to my mom, right? My mother, born in Puerto Rico, but Black as hell, and understood what Black means in this country, and taught us what Black meant in this country, even though it was Puerto Rican. Always told us, don't look at them in the eyes because they'll kill you. Don't run because they'll kill you. From the 8th grade, I knew the police exist to kill me, because my Black mother taught me that, to keep us safe. So when I get there, you just fall into default. And they were just like, what? Like, this happens back home. This happens to Black people back home. This isn't just a Palestine thing. We go through this all the time. So the reason I can do this in Hebron is because I had to do it in New Haven, Connecticut. It's because I had to do it in the Bronx, New York. It's because I had to do it in Philadelphia. There's a lot of us who going through Palestinian-like experiences in the United States that y'all just clueless to, because you don't care about us and you stay away from those neighborhoods. And they were just kind of like, oh, yeah. Like, yeah. I don't want to talk to you either right now. Don't talk to me.
Oof. Yeah, that's hey man. So if folks have comments or questions that they want you to address, please repost them. The last thing I'll
say, the wild experience on the list of wild experience. I want to say, one, if you can go, definitely go. Palestine is a beautiful country, beautiful people, amazing food. I mean, folks are happy. They're whatever. 2 things that stood out to me. One, visited a family who's engaged in a lot of the protests and a lot of stuff over there. Showed us videos of the protests and showed us videos of the Israelis attacking their home, attacking them, whatever. Showed us videos of family members who had those same canisters shot through their eye sockets. Right? This is stuff that you don't hear on the news, but I saw the videos. I did not want to see those videos. They don't give you no trigger warnings. This is not the United States over there. This is what it is. Boom. Y'all are going to see this. Shot through the eye socket at close range. Because again, you have kids who are scared, who are put in these military uniforms and thrown into these situations, right? in this 75-year war, stuff is going to happen. And I'm giving a lot of grace to those young people, right? Because a lot of them fully believe in what they're doing, but they're still young people nonetheless, right? But what you also see was babies. And we asked them in full-on United Statesian nature, like, whoa, right? It's like, your babies, how come the babies are out there, right? Someone asked, how are your children so fearless? There's videos now on Instagram of the children in Gaza writing their names on their arms so that their bodies can be identified when they get blown up or when a building falls on them, right? And they're like, how can the children be so fearless? How do you make that, right? And they were like this, from the time they can walk, we bring them to the protests, we bring them to these rallies so that they get tear gassed, they hear the bangs, they hear the explosions, and then become desensitized to it. And they're no longer scared. And the idea as a parent that I would bring my 3, 4, 5-year-old to these situations because they have to be trained to be able to be calm and to live in that, because that's going to be their reality, was like, it was just silence in the room. There's nothing you could say, right? There's just like, it's just a silence in the room.
As you say that, I fully, again, I don't pretend to understand I don't pretend to understand fully what they're going through. But as you say that, I fully do understand the logic of, if I felt put in that position vis-a-vis my children, I can absolutely understand how people would reach the conclusion, I would rather attempt to kill you and in fact die than have to go through that. So my point being that, again, no legit interest in peace or overcoming these issues can exist if people are willing to bomb and hurt other people's children like that. I mean, it's just,
and the understanding is that you're going to die, that death is going to come, that death is going to touch you, death is going to touch your family one way or another. I would say the people absolutely wanted peace. They live in peace. They speak of peace, again, with this simultaneous understanding that death will come in the most horrific, in the most gruesome way, right? In that they have to be prepared for that moment, because there's still a struggle that has to be waged, right? And they can't yield and they can't run. One, there's nowhere to run to, but they can't run or else they'll lose everything, right? And so they have to stay. And so they have to accept, and they have to accept their incarceration, which was the other piece. When I stayed in a refugee camp, and refugee camps over there, not like what you see on the TV with tents and stuff, they're like neighborhoods, right? So there's like cities and stuff, the refugee camps. I was woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning because tear gas was coming into the window of the room. So one of the sisters who was sleeping in the room starts coughing in the middle of the night. It's about 3 o'clock in the morning, and tear gas comes out. So when we get woken up, we look outside the window and there's gas everywhere. And that's when Israeli soldiers had rushed the camp at 3 o'clock in the morning. And all you hear is explosions, right? And I've seen this with my eyes. And this is the point of the trip, so that you could see it. It's not I saw on the news. I was there. They're shooting. I saw them shooting the canisters. You hear mothers screaming because they're taking children. I saw them grabbing children, and they would take children and young men, and they were taking them away to put them in the trucks. There are other young men who are throwing rocks trying to fight back. There's gas everywhere. We're choking. And just the constant sounds of these flashbangs and these tear gas canisters like going off as you hear children screaming, as you hear mothers screaming, because they're going door to door, stealing your babies to put them in jail for years on end, right? Met a mother who was like, her daughter got arrested and was being sent to jail, and begged the soldiers to arrest her too. And she went into prison with her baby so that her baby wouldn't be in prison alone. And you have mothers who go to prison so that their babies aren't in prison alone. And I was just like, and you see it on the news, you hear it on the news, and like, there it is in real life, and you can't do nothing about it. And then the smoke clears and they all go away, and you're somehow supposed to like go back to sleep, right? And you're just kind of like, yeah, it was intense. It was intense.
I don't know. Yeah.
And so all that to say, right? All that to say is that This is happening because of this government. This is allowed to happen to people around the world because of this government. And as this empire continues to go in decline, and as its hegemony around the world continues to wane, right? And as it continues to be dragged into the hellfire, it holds on, grasps to all of these colonies, right? Be it Haiti, be it Puerto Rico, be it Palestine, be it Northern Africa, be it the Sudan, be it the Philippines, right? Grasping and crawling, trying to drag us into the hellfire with it, desperately trying to save itself. Right? This happens because of this government. The myth of the lesser of two evils. The myth of, well, vote them in and then we hold them accountable, but then you never hold them accountable. Right? The myth of, well, it's either them, but we can't have Trump. This has been happening for 75 years in our name. To Cuba, to Venezuela, to Palestine. Syria has been blown off completely off the map. Iraq has been blown completely off the map. Yemen is being blown completely off the Sudan, Somalia, Chad, right? The list goes on and on of all of our nations done in the name of monopoly capital, U.S. corporate interests. And so the reason we have our cop cities now, the reason why police are killing more people than they ever had before, the reason why they have more money than they've ever had before is because we are in an empire in decline. And those contradictions of capitalism are getting sharper and sharper as we can't pay for homes, we can't pay for school, we can't pay insurance, we can't pay the damn groceries, we can't pay anything, right? This thing is going to pop. It's going to burst. There's only but so much people can take. And when you're talking about the wilderness of North America, or you're talking about the poorest part of the planet Earth, which is Europe, it can't survive without feeding off of us. It literally cannot survive without feeding off of us. And there's only but so much feeding they're going to continuously be allowed to do, right? Before you can't feed no more. And this is where it ties back to us. And so you're building your cop cities and you're militarizing your police more and more. You're trying to turn all of this into Palestine. You're trying to turn all of this into Palestine. And this is where we need to realize, right? It's like, I thought we had, right? There's those memes, right? I thought we had more time. We don't have no more time. This is it. They're taking the water away. They're taking everything away. And they're bringing these cops, right, to do the same thing that they're doing to those people over there. And so that's why I went to show them, right, that there are those of us out here who want to understand, who want to fight back, right, who recognize not only their humanity, but my humanity, my children's humanity. I go over there because of my children's humanity. If I have them, my grandchildren's humanity. This is why we're fighting. This is why we fight this capitalist empire. This is why we fight militarization. This is why we fight those wars, because it's going to come back to us, and it already is. It already is. And if we don't do something about it now, we all going back to those plantations. Right? If you don't stand up for Haiti now against the police occupation and what's happening over there, if you don't stand for Palestine, if you don't stand for Atlanta, Georgia, don't worry about what them people ain't do. Them people, yes, them have. Yes, they have. People on both sides everywhere have always stood up for each other. People have always stood up for each other. You just don't read, beloved. And also, just as a human being, I don't need to know that you're going to do something for me in return for me to stand up and do what's right. That's not how my mother raised me. That's not right. That's not the type of person. When I think of New African, when I think of being proud, when I think of being Puerto Rican, when I think of being Black, that's what it means. I don't need you to do nothing for me to do what's right. I don't need to believe in something in the sky to teach me that I know who I am, true and living right here. I don't need nothing in return for me to do what's right. And that's the example that we show. So I don't know if there's any other questions or whatever. But.
Ain't nothing else to say after that. Well, there's only one thing to say after that.
Now listen, that's called my boy. You know nothing about that.
Plus, I just needed a break. I needed a 6-second break. Because what can we say? Stop making us wait so long before you come back. That's on you. That's the only flaw in your whole personhood, is you made us wait this long.
Look, as long as y'all keep bringing up Black Israelites, I don't know. I don't know if there's a space for me on here, brother. This is a completely different channel y'all got going.
So look, Diallo wanted us to see who his sparring partners are, and
nobody asked for that.
Oh man, yo, like seriously, I don't know what else it is. Everybody has already spoken to the power of what you just said and the need to share that. We will all clip it. Yeah, I hear you. We so just remember, when you think about some of those lows, try to remember what we just saw here.
Yeah,
BPM also does that. Okay,
I'll do a better job. I'll do a better job. But folks, I mean, definitely.
But well, just quickly, Jägermeister dropped a super chat to ask about something I don't know anything about. He's as usual, he stays above my head. So I don't know about the Jewish autonomous oblast in the Soviet Union. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know anything. I don't think I've ever even read or seen those words in that order. So
yeah, I don't know.
Jägermeister, if you're playing Stump the panel, you win. But thank you for the super chat and the constant support.
Yeah, I don't know enough about Jewish stuff to be able to comment on that.
Yeah, Hiram for president for sure. By the way, I did have as a question to ask you your thoughts on that, these campaigns and whatnot. But PLO style BPM with the owls, keep it up. Thank you, Nelson. I don't know. Do you have a second to talk to say a few words about what you think about all these elections from Cornel West to the PSL to the Greens? Any thoughts on any of that as it relates maybe to what we've been talking about here?
Full transparency, I think I've only voted one time in my life when I was 18, just to do it, just to see what that was, and I never did it again. I am not a fan of electoralism and the electoral process. That said, I understand, right? I understand it for folks in their projects as a tool used for furthering the struggle and all of that thing. I think it's a tricky minefield that I'm just not equipped to be able to like navigate. That said, I think with the elections, like always, is try to educate yourself as much as you can on platforms, but not just platforms, just on geopolitics, and see whose platforms make the most sense to you, right? You're going to get propagandized. Look for projects. Don't look for celebrity stuff. Don't look, put hopes and dreams on elected officials. And get organized. I mean, an election isn't going to save us. Elections have never saved us in this country. Like Mouseland. I think it was Eugene Debs, right? In that classic video, if you look it up on YouTube, is a great breakdown of electoralism in the U.S. and the West. And so for me, I don't really have a stay. I don't get too caught up in that. Definitely pro Claudia Karina 24. But again, different organizations use elections for different purposes, right?
Yeah, there's a clear difference with that campaign, it seems.
So it's about if you're using them to put issues on the table, to build projects, to organize folks, and because that's where you're meeting the majority of the folks, right? And that's how the majority of people understand power, understand democracy, understand, right, in bourgeois society. Then I totally understand engaging in that realm of that field of struggle. I'm not equipped for that. I'm not built for that, right? But others are. And how you use that to further build out the organizations that we need to build the struggle that we're going to have to wage to break ourselves out of this hellscape that we live in. That's
so, by the way, just be quick before I forget.
Yeah,
somebody,
Jared.
when somebody finds I'll look for it, but if somebody finds the exact timestamp where Hiram says something to the effect, "You're not reading, beloved," please I need that, because that's going to be another clip. That's the next drop.
Patience.
That's going to be the
Patience
next
with
drop.
our people. Patience with our people. Revolutionary patience with. This is something that I got from Claudia, right? And I saw her say it at a rally in New York City. Revolutionary patience. Look, our people are heavily colonized, heavily propagandized, heavily socialized, as we all are. Colonized people are going to say colonized things, right? Revolutionary patience with our folks. We weren't born knowing all the things, and so we struggle with them, right? And we push them as much as we can. There's some folks who just gonna have to be left by the wayside, and that's very clear. But the majority of our folks, right, need to be struggled with lovingly and patiently. So, which is why I say, read, beloved, and I will read with you, and we can do this together, right? Out of my love for you, and because I need you in this struggle. I need you in this struggle. And so, that's the best I can do.
So just quickly, McYagermeister apparently asked another good question earlier about the excuse that there were no Jewish people, nowhere else Jewish people could go pre-1948. So that's why Israel exists. It's a canard. It's a canard. Don't even have a question. Thank you, Musa. Just thankful to Hiram's crystal analysis, ability to communicate firsthand experiences in such a legible way. Much love and power. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
And they're right. That's right. That was clear.
I do it for the remixes. I'm gonna remix it to the end. I'll remix it first, remix it, you know what I'm saying, to the end.
I got to be careful messing with Hiram though, man, because you give the good word, boy. I was ready to turn some tables over and start swinging, boy. Because as soon as I start getting emotional and start tearing up, I start getting violent. That's my response. My old retrograde manhood response. You start making me tear up, I start thinking about violence. I just can't help it. I just can't. I'm not proud of it either. I'm just saying it is what it is.
It is to that because it's not fair and it's not right. It's unnecessary and seeing
angry,
that over there made me see this over here, a little clear. And I get mad about because our people are suffering damn near the same stuff here. Right.
I'm just admitting that's my response to keep me from crying. I just let the anger flow, boy. I just redirect it. Like, nah, I ain't gonna be up here getting sad. I'm gonna start swinging on something.
I was one of those too. I was whenever I had.
I'm still there. I can't help it.
Tearing up. I'm like, damn, man, I don't want. Now I definitely gotta let these hands go because
let them. Got to. Can't be up here just crying.
You just be up there crying.
If you crying and swinging, it looks bad.
And I couldn't go home. I couldn't go home with tears, and my mom be like, so what'd you do about that? Like, no.
Even my mother drove me back to the fight. Like, nah, get you back. Drove me back over to that joint and called the boy outside herself.
Damn.
Called the boy outside herself and said, "You fighting my son right over there."
No.
So, thank you, Brandon. What are your top 5 books? If you got that's on the spot. It just says what are your top 5. I don't.
Oh wow. I would have to think about that. I can definitely give. I mean, I'll give you some of the 5 that I revisited recently. I can't give like a top 5, but definitely Wretched of the Earth, State and Revolution by Lenin, The Manifesto, The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin was one that I gave my son recently. Beautiful, some beautiful book. Damn, right off the top of my head, it's hard. Those are the ones I've recently went back and read again, but I can come up with a list.
Well, you just come back sooner than a year or whatever, and you can talk more about it. Alex says, thank you for the super chat. I'd like to hear Hiram's thoughts on what's going to happen. I've seen that China and Russia are sending warships out. I didn't know that. I think,
and again, I am not an analyst in no way, shape, or form. I'm not a journalist in no way, shape, or form. So this is just, what I'm saying. But I think as the conflict continues to go, right? As the genocide continues to escalate, you're going to see the countries in the region pushed to some sort of response. I think they've stood down much longer than they should have. But I think that you see the people in Egypt, you see the people in Jordan. There's only but so much that their own home populations are going to put up with as they watch their brothers and sisters and babies. I mean, that's the wild. And we live in a moment because of social media where we see war in real time. We see war through Instagram stories, right? Like we see. The only thing I can compare it to is when the images of the coffins during the Vietnam era, right? They're on TV, and the US was like, don't ever show nothing like that again. Because of Twitter and Instagram, right, and Telegram and all these things, we're seeing these things in real life, and it's pushing people's emotions to places where they probably haven't been in a long time. And so it's only but so far that those countries are going to stand down. I'm talking about Jordan, Lebanon, Egypt, Iran, right? All these places, even the Saudis, right? Before. So the longer this conflict goes, the worse off it's going to be for the United States. The worse off it's going to be for Israel. And then you have the other global powers who are also then going to decide to step in, right? And so as the hegemon continues to get weaker and weaker, they're going to capitalize on these moments geopolitically. And you see that, right? So yeah, I mean, for those folks on Instagram, Palestine Pixel, right, is an incredible outlet for like real time from Palestinians and in Palestine. Is a source that I always look at. But that's how I see that in just a very, not trying to step and speak on things that I don't know much about, but it's going to be.
Appreciate it.
And
what I would like to record. Yeah,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Real quick, I saw on Instagram, you also see folks on the Israeli side. So you see the extreme violence on that side, but there were folks from the Knesset, right, from the regime, right after the action of Hamas, who went to hospitals, and Israeli citizens yelled and kicked them out the hospital. Nurses and doctors kicking them out of the hospital, telling them that you destroyed the country, you ruined the country, because they understand there is no coming back from this. There is no restorative justice for this. There is no coming back, and you have set the country on a trajectory that it can't pull back from. And even those folks over there understand that now their lives are completely changed, right? And that they also will have to live with that cloud of what could happen over them, and directing it at their government. They're like, you did this. You didn't have to do this. This is your fault, right? I think a lot of those voices get suppressed as well, because the last thing they want is like Israeli folks, seeing Israeli folks being like, you ruined everything. Why did you do this? Like, get away from us. So you're just going to see it. It's just going to push, and there's going to be a breaking point. And ultimately, this is going to continue to further expedite the decline of U.S. Hegemony across the world. And because it's a stain on Israel's invincibility, right? That's what we're always taught, that the Mossad, that's the security, the surveillance, the military is the best, it's incredible. And you had brothers in balloons and pickup trucks. This is like when Malcolm talked about the Viet Cong, right? You got some brothers in pajamas and a blade, and destroyed the aura of invincibility.
You're gonna let some, and he said it, he twisted the pejorative. You gonna let some rice eater out revolution you?
Right. Brothers in pajamas and a blade, right? And so it showed Israel to be the paper tiger that it is. Without U.S. billions, without U.S., right? It is just a paper tiger, and they showed that, and there's no coming back from that either. The same way for the United States in their losses in Iraq, the losses in Afghanistan, the loss in Vietnam, right? The losses everywhere. Their inability after 125 years still cannot erase Puerto Rico and Puerto Rican cultures, even after 125 years of violent colonization, 60 years of a Cuban embargo, and you can't erase that, right? They have been defeated everywhere. And there's no coming back from that as well. And so this will shift a lot in the coming years. What does that mean for the rest of us? I don't know, but it definitely shifts a great deal. One thing I also want to say and drive folks to is because we mentioned Fanon, and this is why I'm bringing it back to Fanon. the process of colonization, right, is a process of dehumanization, not just for the colonized, but for the colonizer themselves. And we see this, and I saw that when I was over there as well, right? And Fanon talked about it, Césaire talks about it, right? That their willingness and them becoming comfortable with the barbarity, with the savagery of colonial violence, right? Of just kind of becoming monsters themselves and being dehumanized in that process of colonization themselves, right? Is a sight to see. That as the colonizer being dehumanized forcibly through oppression, the colonized themselves are dehumanizing themselves through that barbarity and morphing into that animal that then requires, right, the response that we see and the struggle to take back some of that human and finding that humanization through the process of decolonial struggle, which is a violent process. And Fanon speaks of the violent, internally violent, right? And I was going through that process. Again, I speak of the Americanization that we carry. We go to that country and the things that I had to process in a violent process internally myself to understand what was happening, understand what I was seeing, understand all the feelings, right? It's not just guns, but the internal violence that has to happen. And so for folks on Twitter, here in Philadelphia, we have what's called the W.E.B. Du Bois Abolition School, which is run by former professor Geo Marr. And Geo and the Abolition School. So if you go to W.E.B. Du Bois, it's called Abolition at Abolition School, I believe on Twitter. But it's W.E.B. Du Bois Abolition School. There's 2 threads that they posted explaining this point, explaining Fanon, explaining Césaire within the context of what is currently happening in Gaza, which I think is absolutely phenomenal, and helps folks here understand very clearly and drives home the point that that those 2 brothers were making. So take time out to check that out on Twitter as well. That's it right there. I mean, just brilliant anti-colonial analysis, looking at Césaire and Fanon, looking at Palestine and Gaza from the lens, right, in the text of Césaire and Fanon. That helps us understand those texts much more than just Fanon said, kill Whitey, right? It's much deeper than that. So yeah.
Well, look, Hiram, I appreciate you coming through today and saying,
I ain't scared of you motherfuckers.
Man, rest in peace, Bernie Mac, man.
Yes, sir.
Rest in peace, Bernie Mac.
Yes, sir. All day. But no, seriously, man, I really appreciate you and I appreciate you coming through. I definitely appreciate you reaching out to set this up. I want to credit you with that and thank you for doing
Real
that.
quick, real quick.
Yeah, anytime. Come on, please.
Sounds. I saw the question around Colombia.
Oh, what's up?
And again,
I
think the piece about, and again, I am not a journalist. I'm not I'm just a guy here in Philadelphia, right? I'm just a guy. But that said, I think we're in this moment, right, in a declining hegemon, in a declining in an empire in decline, and folks are willing to risk it, right, and risk it all, to be on the right side of history and do what is right. And so what you see is a lot of pushback, right? And there's been a lot of talk, this being the 200-year anniversary of the Monroe Doctrine that makes Latin America the backyard of the United States, right? So there's been a lot of organizing, a lot of talk around that. And so in this moment of an empire in decline, stretched thin, trying to fight Russia through the Ukraine, trying to fight China, trying to do all these things, you see other countries who are like, to Bernie Mac's point, I ain't scared of you motherfuckers. It's a different time. It's a different time. And you're going to see a lot more of this. And I think for us, going back to us in this country, get organized, whatever that means for you. I always believe in organizations. Join an organization. There's different politics that believe different types of collectives and different types of organizing. Whatever you do, get organized. Join a group. Be accountable to folks. Study with folks. Get your politics from other folks together collectively, and then get out there and let's work. Let's build these projects. Let's build this fight. No, Petros is not the end all be all, right? Like, again, politicians are politicians and they're never going to be whatever. But in this moment, we as a people, organized bodies of people, organizations can keep pushing in the streets. That either forces these folks to change, or better yet, right, topples them, and we can put our people in power. Because ultimately, this is a fight for power. It's a fight for control, and it's a fight for power.
My man, thank you very much. It's been great. Just don't make us wait this long next time. Come back anytime, holler at me or us anytime you got something to say, and let's do this again sooner than later.
Get in them
Thank you
streets,
very
y'all.
much.
Join them protests, get in them streets, bring your flags out. Philly had, 20,000 last night. Philly did it big, so love to see everybody else out there. And don't let this be the only, don't let it just be Palestine. All of them. Everybody needs this support. Everybody needs it. The streets is fun. The streets are fun, y'all. I'm telling you, the streets are fun. Be out there.
It's facts. That's right on. All right, Hiram. Thank you very much, my man. Take care. Peace to you, man, because I know you're willing to fight for it. All right, everybody. Listen. Remember this show the next time you fix your hands to start sending me a critique of what's going on around here. Remember that. Thank you all for joining us who are here live, and to all of those who will see this later, definitely thank you as well. Peace if you're willing to fight for it. As Fred Hampton used to say, you were treated right by me on this show all day, on this platform all day. So like, share, subscribe, support Patreon if at all possible. Put this in your socials. And let's go. Peace, everybody. Only if you're willing to fight for it, like Fred Hampton used to say. Thank you all very much. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.